Hello and welcome back to the Obojima Podcast. My name is Jeremiah and I am joined with Ari and Adam, and we are the writers of Obojima. And you are joining us for our weekly writers meeting where we sit down, we talk D&D, we talk Obojima, we talk ghibli, we talk ghibli.
We talk gibberish.
Movies. We talk
probably
gibberish.
Avatar.
Yeah, probably
and Avatar.
We talk about the same four things we always talk about.
And Naruto. We haven't mentioned Naruto.
We haven't mentioned
some
Naruto
time.
Yeah,
in
a while.
And that's a gift
Of Shiratashi.
of Shiratashi.
Yet one of the other gifts of Shiratashi
is a break.
is a break
A reprieval from Jeremiah's fandom.
Never. It is a gift to
My
us all.
gift to you all is to watch the first 6 seasons of Naruto. Enjoy. This week's episode is another community-driven podcast episode.
Love it.
A topic given to us by Discord and Discord, but also YouTube sometimes. But this time, Discord.
Thank you.
And the topic is, what are the other witch covens? Why didn't you write about them? Give us more. This is lame.
Yeah. Curse you, writers.
That's a direct quote. No, in Obojima, in the first book, we did a lot of world development. And in that world development, we said, there are 6 covens. And then we promptly told you about one of them.
There are probably more than 6.
Oh, there's definitely more
Yeah.
than 6. But there's 6 major covens. So
Yeah.
let's talk about them. So we
All
go
right.
into detail about the Fish-Head Coven quite a bit. This is like the capstone coven, the big one. They encompass 2 of the 7 regions, and they're all over the place. But there are other covens. And today we are going to be talking about the Tall Hat Coven, which is probably the next most talked about coven in the book, but still not really fleshed out. And so today we're talking about them. We're going to give some details. We're going to come up with some cool ideas, and maybe it's Maybelline. Who's to say?
Maybe the tall hats were born with it.
Exactly. So the Tall Hats, I believe the official section on the Tall Hats just says
they primarily wander in their caravan in the gift of Shiratashi. So unlike the other covens that have kind of fixed locations where they primarily operate out of, or they might have like a kind of witch's kind of lair, I guess, or headquarters.
Yeah.
The Tall Hats move about, which is kind of cool, and that's really, and we know that they're called the Tall Hats. Yeah, and just to kind of circle back, one of the reasons we kind of fleshed out one coven in detail with the Fish-Head Coven is to show kind of this is what a coven might look like. And then we wanted the other ones, we listed out, here's a few other ones, and then they're probably more beyond even the ones that are listed, but we basically wanted to be evocative with some of these names or kind of be charming with them. And they're kind of meant to be kind of played around with. You could make them your own. But there has been the outcry that we have heard to
the desire
develop
for
them.
more information.
Yeah. So
leave us alone, Mel Brooks. That was a
But yeah, you
Robin
know,
Hood Men in Tights reference.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
we could definitely say what we think, you know, the tall hats could be, but again, like we said, you know, it's like you can make tall hats whatever you want, and if you probably some players out there have already made tall hats into their own things.
But there is a right answer.
Yes.
If you didn't do it, you're wrong.
Yep.
And we'll find you and we'll let you know that you're
Yes,
wrong.
the Obojima police will come knocking on your door. Dun, dun, dun.
So for Tall Hats, what we know is they wander, and we've kind of done a little bit of development off screen. I think one of the interesting things we've been talking about is the idea of the Tall Hats having these festivals that they throw at small towns and villages all throughout the Gift of Shiratashi, where they take their caravan, and they go to different locations and they throw a potion brewing festival or a witch festival or something like that, with the goal of growing the coven. They're looking for young, talented witches to join the coven, and this is the way they kind of seek them out, is that they throw a festival, and then at the end they might go, you're very talented. Would you like to join the coven and follow us? And they might join, and it grows their numbers, and they become perhaps a bigger coven of sorts. What their goals and desires are, I think, that's even something that we don't necessarily get into the details with any of the covens. I don't think they, as a group, have a specific goal in mind. Although it seems that they are steadfast on not staying in one place for some reason. So maybe we can get into those details a little bit.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think that there's something interesting there about like does each coven have a sort of like the first of the tall hats or the first of the Fish-Head covens, or that maybe there was some overarching, like the witches, came to Obojima, or the witches, were there, and then eventually they realized that they had to split off into different sections, or there were a bunch of witches on Obojima, and over time they kind of congregated to different parts of the island and started the magic that they use is kind of influenced by region. So the Crowsworn, who are in the Blackwater Wetlands, their magic just naturally is going to be derived from the ingredients that they find there and sort of the animals and all that kind of stuff. That would be something interesting to explore. It's just like, what are their origin stories? How does the region affect them? And is there something in their mythos that they're trying to do? Like, maybe they're not trying to do anything. They're just kind of having fun and enjoying and coming up with new festivals. Or maybe there's a coven that actually has an objective. Like maybe the Gilded Gourd is trying to find this sort of holy grail relic that was like long ago. Maybe one of the great beasts, they said the heart of one of these great beasts, when it fell, it was buried. And now they've got to find, that's what they're looking for, or something like that.
Well, so the way to kind of jump into this, the way I'm imagining covens probably form is you're looking for witches or other, magic users of like-mindedness who are trying, like in numbers, you're able to share resources and help each other and grow. And that comes, it's clear that each one has set to a region. So it doesn't make sense for you to become a Fish-Head member if they're all in the Gale Fields. And it might be difficult for you to become a Crowsworn if you don't live in the Blackwater Wetlands. So if you're in the Gift of Shiratashi, you probably want to be a part of this group of witches, and that's just because that's just the name they might have given themselves that name as they formed, like these group of people. Now, when it comes to the wandering side of things, I was thinking that they potentially could have an affinity for potion brewing, because someone who wanders, like you need to collect ingredients, thus wandering around to get those ingredients. If you're fixed in one position, it's significantly harder to find those. Yeah. So they could be hyper fixated on potion brewing.
Could also be that's where if you're say an adventurer and you want eclectic ingredients and you don't want to have to travel super far, you find a tall hat, like a caravan, and go up to them and they're like, oh yeah, we went through the Blackwater Wetlands a while ago and we've got a bunch of cool slimes and roots that you wouldn't have seen like around here in the Gale Fields or the Gift, and and now you can do some trading.
Yeah, I think just the fact that the Gift of Shiratashi is probably the biggest region in terms of like by square miles, the idea that they move around also makes a lot of sense. And there's a bunch of tiny villages scattered throughout, so it's like I love the idea of, and the fact they're called tall hats. I'm assuming that's because they have tall hats and this idea of how easily identifiable they are walking through a village, stuff like that, which I think is really fun. I'm just like, oh, a tall hat's come to town. That's neat. And and they might have little carriages or their own mounts that they then link up with this larger caravan that kind of moves through seasonally, perhaps moves through the entire Gift of Shiratashi. Cool. Which I think is cool.
I want like a whole page of tall hats, just like illustrated hats. And each one does a different thing. Ones. Yeah.
I love it.
That's neat.
So this is an interesting topic. I think it's very standard D&D to say like there's an organization and thus they have a goal. But in the real world, organizations can form around a topic or a hobby that we are all part of. Like if we all played pickleball, we might all be like, let's start a pickleball club, and we get people to join the pickleball club, and now we all play pickleball in a park every Sunday. And it's not because our pickleball club wants to overthrow the local Red Robin, and we have this secret goal.
We can get all the cheeseburgers.
Like people would be like, why did you form this pickleball club? What are you trying to do? We don't trust you, right? Like, so it could just be that like there isn't a necessarily driven goal where it's like, I'm joining the Tall Hats because I too think we should turn Mount Abora, we should carve Mount Abora into one tall witch's hat.
This comes back to, again, like what drives people to join a coven in the first place. Because there are casters and there are witches that are not part of covens and things like that. In the book, it says most witches are linked to a coven, a group of witches sworn to aid the other members and share their arcane secrets with each other. And so it says other witches remain solitary, preferring to stay out of the inter-coven feuds. That doesn't mean that covens won't try to recruit them or at least exert influence over them. So again, it's this idea of if you love this craft, you'll gravitate to other people that love that craft and who have a similar point of view on it. Mm-hmm. And so the Tall Hats, the question might be like, does the Tall Hats coven have a different perspective on magic and on the arcane than the Fish-Head Coven or the League of the Gilded Gourd? What I do like is that one of these covens, or some, might be driven by, like, the thing that binds them is their drive to find a thing. So at the League of the Gilded Gourd, their whole deal is the Gilded Gourd is that holy grail object, and they're looking for that. So this is almost like a witch order of the grail. So I think looking at each of these covens, you have an opportunity to
make them individual.
You make them individual. What is their organizing principle? I think that's really fun.
I think there could be a natural rivalry between the Tall Hats and the Fish-Head, because the Fish-Head actually pops up quite a bit in the Gift of Shiratashi. And so they pop up everywhere. They pop up everywhere. But the Tall Hats could have this, like, we don't want that. And maybe that's also a reason. That also could be a portion of the reason that they travel is they head to the small villages to find these talented witches and we want to grow our numbers. Maybe they're scared of what the Fish-Head Coven have done in the past. Perhaps the Fish-Head Coven is maybe aggressive in some ways, or there's a lot to be said about the Fish-Head Coven and what they could be. But I do like the idea of these rivalries, and maybe the Tall Hats want to be at the same level that the Fish-Head are at, and so they're always trying to grow and they're always trying to do these things. But then, exactly like you were saying, like somewhere in the land of hot water, the Gilded Gourd or the Patchwork Robe Coven are just like, we're just trying to complete the largest quilt or whatever it is, or we're working on infusing magic into sewing or something.
Or it's like the Patchwork Robe could be that, as witches go out and find things, a witch might see something like a weaving or some object or something that they want to incorporate into the great quilt, whatever that is. And it's like they brings this thing back. And so this quilt is being constructed, and as it's being built, it might be taking on magical properties. It might be granting visions. It could be doing some kind of area of effect in the air. Like, who knows? Like, we could just make up anything, but it's like that as they're building this quilt, something cool is happening.
Yeah.
Or it's telling a story, or, every witch that brings something back is like kind of incorporating their story into this giant, I'm thinking of like the Bayou Tapestry, which is, or the Bayou Tapestry, which kind of tells about the war. But it's like telling their story. So that could be something cool. Like, it doesn't have to be some, magical. It could be something mundane, or like you said, like a pickleball. Like this witch group just wants to make the best potions ever.
So with the Tall Hats, let's think a little bit about how are they organized. Like the Fish-Head Coven are overseen essentially by the Council of 3 and 30, and that's this. That's how. Like who governs the majority of things going on in the Fish-Head Coven, and basically might be the most powerful entity of witches on the island. But how are the Tall Hats organized? If they are more nomadic, is there, Is there like a conclave essentially every once in a while where the witches of the tall hats come together? Or because they're very festival driven, going from place to place, is there essentially some sort of formal meeting of the coven where if there are larger decisions to be made, they happen there? Is there a leader? Are they, or not a leader? Is it a very flat organization? Like what do we think about the way that the tall hats might be organized?
And one of the things we could think of, like if we're templating out, like what are their initiation? Like if you join this coven, what's their initiation? Is it that these wandering groups can initiate, or like you said, is there some moment like once a year, all the tall hats get together and then all the new witches are sort of inducted into the coven? Maybe
tall hats all take on the equivalent of like they all take an apprentice, like, and so everybody puts their apprentices forward or whatever. And maybe there's like a kind of Jedi Padawan thing or a Knight Squire type thing, which is just Jedi Padawan thing. Is there something like that where they take on an apprentice? So it's very individualized. I mean, that's another way to think about them. Are tall hats, do they mostly operate individually? Or are they moving around in groups of tall hats?
So does the coven, it says they move around in a giant caravan. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for the members? Does that mean all of the tall hat coven is moving around in a unit, except for specialty members that might be learning at the witchery, or members that are in Alua or stationed in other places? But essentially, if you're not stationed somewhere, like if you haven't been assigned a location from the tall hats, then you're in this huge caravan, and there's like a group of hundreds of witches that are traveling around, and they're learning magic and doing all of these things. It also could be like an act of service. Like when the tall hats come in, it's like everyone's like, I'm gonna, like, if you don't, maybe you go to these local towns that might not have a local witch or something like that, and it's like you bring out your axes, they're gonna be magically sharpened, or your scythes are gonna cut twice the amount of wheat. You might get thing like this lockbox has been sealed for 10 years and they'll unlock it for you. Like you just like all of the trinkets and things that you're like, I haven't been able to solve this, maybe magic can. And these witches kind of serve as like a traveling, like, no matter the skill set you need, our magic can solve it, and like we will do that for you. And like maybe that's kind of their shtick, is they'll travel to these locations.
They're very like agricultural minded,
Yeah.
Like they're there to help farmers and just generally farmers to like make sure that their tools are in tip-top shape and that kind of thing, or to help their crops grow. It could also be that the tall hats are like kind of like the carnival that comes to town, and they're musicians and they're acrobats, and they do sort of this like, they're not necessarily like Barnum Bailey Circus coming to town, but they're more like that. They're bringing to like a life where everybody's just kind of farming and doing this sort of routine stuff. Here come the tall hats to add this spice to your village, and the tall hats might come through like once a year, and like the village are all waiting, like especially the kids. They're just waiting for the call, like, please, when the tall hats coming.
It's like Gandalf with the fireworks.
Yeah. And so then you hear, like one of the farmers or the shepherds will hear like the music playing as the caravan comes. So the tall hats could bring something like that as well. So, or it could be a combination. It's like they're bringing this like sort of rites of spring, and they're playing this lively music where everybody gets together, has a good time, but then they're also sharpening the tools, and your scythe does double the wheat duty and all that stuff.
So if it's that one, which I really like, that means that they're not in one caravan, that they would disperse to different villages, so that, if I go to any one village at the turn of spring, it's all the villages are celebrating that thing, but there's a tall hat there also conducting that. Yeah, making that happen, which is kind of cool.
Or is it that every village has a different tall hat day, where it's like they come in the spring, and then you go like 4 villages over, and they're like, they come in the summer.
Right. And
then it's like, oh, that's the winter festival. So the tall hat festival is different in every village.
Travel around.
Interesting.
And they just always return on their big loop.
That's cool.
So
the annual loop.
To go back on like the action of service and all of those things, and to go into the leader question that Ari asked earlier, I think what we could do is we had talked about the kind of categories of magic that exist within Obojima. And I imagine if they want if the Tall Hats want this diversity, where it's like within our caravan, we always have, this many potion brewers and this many spirit soothers and this many whatever. Like they have all these different categories of magic that these people have mastered. Like we always want potion brewers and we always want diviners and we always want whatever. The most skilled of all of those categories might kind of lead the Tall Hats as like a group. So it's like the best potion brewer.
Yes, the head of that caravan.
Is the head of best potion brewer works with the best diviner, and they work with the best transmuter, and they work and so that's like a group of like 12 people that are like, I'm the best of the best within the Tall Hats of this skill set, and we make decisions for the caravan together. Yeah, and that could be how they function. It's not necessarily the 3 and 30. It also could be that they just have a vote where it's like, hey, we have a leader. And if the leader's satisfying the organization, then the leader stays. Yeah. And then the moment that their leader is not satisfying the organization, they might put up to a vote on whether they should change that person. And then it just shifts.
Yeah, or it could be that
whenever they see fit.
Or the leader currently is self-aware enough to be like, yeah, I'm just kind of done. Like I'm going to step down, and we're and maybe it's just kind of self-evident that who that next leader is, like.
And there also might not be a leader. I mean, the idea is that these are covens that have come together to form that bond, and it might be essentially there might not be kind of a leader or governing group within the group. It could it could just be
like when it comes to entertaining, we know that Jeff is the one who should be doing it, and when it comes to doing farm magic, we know that Sally's the one to be doing that. It's like
we have maybe there are leaders but not a leader in the sense that like you get to a certain point within the organization that people just kind of listen to you and they'll trust you, kind of how in the sword school in the sword schools you'll have members who have mastered the feat or the skill set, and those people go off, and then in order to get an invitation to the sword school you have to be recommended by one of them. And so you could kind of have a similar situation where it's like we don't have leaders, but like if you want to join, you kind of have to be recommended by one of the higher ups, or they have to review you and let you in.
And that could also be why the Tall Hats are wandering and looking for new candidates. Maybe they're not just looking for any new candidate. They're like, hey, we need a candidate who has these kinds of skills.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of combing through and they're looking for, this person's really good at this magic that we're missing, and
that's interesting.
And it could be every year they might be like, hey, this year the festival might change where it's like, we're looking for this type of magic this year. So this is the festival that we're throwing because we're trying to see if anyone has any talent in this category.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think that could totally work. I do like the idea of them being slightly wary. I think that's the issue we might have with not having a leader or having some amount of leaders is I don't feel that the entire organization would be wary of the Fish-Head Covens, but I think a select few people within the organization might be like at odds. So we talk about, I guess my question really comes down to is if we are discussing and fleshing out the Tall Hats, how do they interact with the Fish-Head? Because we claimed that there are squabbles and there is some issues that occur within these organizations.
I tend to think when I consider the witches and Obojima, I tend to think that feuds are probably witch to witch. And it could be that because there are like a lot of the Fish-Head Coven witches, and a lot of Fish-Head Coven witches might have a kind of like a sense of entitlement, perhaps, that might rankle other witches in other places. But I still think it's probably a Tall Hat might have a grievance with a Fish-Head Coven witch, right? something like that.
So you think it's not organization wide, it is within.
I just think that feels more Obojima for one, that it's a person thing. It might be a certain issue where like this like cluster of tall hats like really doesn't like the Fish-Head Coven.
Yeah.
As a coven, and there's the rumors about how the Fish-Head Coven got their other almanac and whatnot. And so anyway, yeah, just kind of considering. I think it's fun if you keep it personal. That just feels more Obojima. But you can, obviously, I think you could take it wherever you want. The idea of coven feuds is just really intriguing, and especially like depending on what it's about. I think it also could be an interesting thing where the tall hats might have a reputation among the other witches for being either flighty, and this is why they kind of go from place to place, or maybe are they on the run for some reason or something like that you can do things like how do the other covens, like you could do a whole matrix of like how the general vibe of each coven to each coven, kind of like what we did in when we were working on Ravnica for Magic. One of the cool things that we did was like there are 10 guilds, and we would do how this guild feels about the other 10 guilds generally speaking, and like kind of the reputations.
I remember writing those.
So much fun.
That was fun.
And so that's the thing we could also do if we ever wanted to explore that, is just the general relationship among all of the different covens. Yeah,
what is their beef and what did they generally say? Yeah, that's cool.
And if there's any history between them, like are one of these covens a splinter from another one, things like that. So like, is the Patchwork Robe Coven actually made of maybe exiles from all the other covens? That's why they call themselves the Patchwork Robe Coven.
I mean,
I don't know.
The Cloudcap Coven does have a similarly pointy hat to the Tall Hats. Could they be related in some way?
Where they all won, and then
and, or the Tall Hats travel. A group of them travel to the top of Mount Abora, and then they're like, "What if we just stay here?
This is our place."
They just they went up there and they had some sort of revelation, and they're like, "Okay, we're supposed to start a new coven."
So that's what I think is fun, to kind of explore all that kind of stuff. One thing about the Tall Hats that I wanted to talk about was that while they do move around, they do have a permanent location in the Elua, which is that spirit market village.
Yep.
And they operate an apothecary and fortune-telling kiosk in the Plaza of Lanterns there. And they also help folks lost in the spirit realm return home, which says something about perhaps the Tall Hats' expertise in dealing with spirits, and some of which have been to the spirit realm and know how to navigate there, or they have contacts in the spirit realm that would help them.
I think it definitely reinforces that carnival, like traveling, Barden Bay, like the spirit, like the fortune teller vibe feels very caravan, we're not just diving into, like, we are offering many services. I actually love the idea of like all the different services, and they're all canvas tents that look like a wide-brimmed tall hat that folds open with the eyeball at the top, and it's just different colors, and each one represents a different skill set.
Yeah. And then, they could have a thing where, the curio shop where you go in and you see the two-headed turtle or something, and they're like, the kids are like, ooh, and they're like, ooh, check this out. And they have, all the strange spirits, like, have you ever seen a spirit like this, And
it's the reverse, because it's all modern. It's all of that's normalized in Obojima. Right. So they're like, look at this. It's a microwave.
It's a microwave.
Whoa.
Yeah. Press this
put
button.
this in and you push a button, it comes out hot.
And like, watch what it does to a marshmallow. So,
do marshmallows exist in Obojima?
They do now.
Yes.
Oh wow.
If hot chocolate exists,
we've just spoken it into being.
Does hot chocolate exist?
Yeah.
We were actually talking about the need for just a good coffee shop in Obojima. We have tea shops and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do need a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like, what is the deal with the tall hats? Like, is there some special significance to why the hat, because in, the Western tradition, like the idea, the dunce cap, it was like to bring energy into your head to make you smarter. That was one of the...
Really?
Yeah. That's why the dunce cap was created, like a cone.
The smart energy.
It was to try to bring your energy. And so, the wizard was shown like that because they're bringing in, the ether or the energy into their head. But in Obojima world, like, what was there, an ancient magic item that was, the great tall hat, and maybe one of the tall hat covens has a box, and they open it up, and this was the original, magic item.
That's like the way I thought about it was just because of how rural a lot of the Gift of Shiratashi was. I imagined if the wizards here kind of traditionally have the pointed hat, whenever they went into a village, the villagers would simply say, "Oh, it's one of these tall hats," right? And then they kind of took that on themselves. It's like, yeah, we are the tall hats.
It was just part of their unique culture thing.
And I think that's something they probably adopted over time. But like the idea of them having the tall hat or whatever, or maybe they're kind of encouraged to each have this kind of individualized, tall hat or whatever. I think is really fun. But yeah, I just pictured that as something that they probably adopted over time because they travel everywhere. Them entering a village, and then people would be like, "Oh, it's one of those tall hats in town or whatever." And for them, that's just synonymous with witch, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then this coven in particular took that on as their name.
There's a interesting guy that I watch again on some random Instagram account, of course, but he reenacts. I guess like he kind of does like traditional Scandinavian bushcraft. So like he's out in a field with 1,000 goats, and he has like a bunch of knapsacks and sticks, and like just talks about like, this is why you'd make hardtack because it lasts longer, and he does all these things, and it always, without fail, looks like the most uncomfortable thing you've ever done in your life because he's covered in wool, and he's like sleeping on the side of it. He's like using a rock for a pillow. But one thing that I think is really interesting is that like everything, at least that he wears, it's like always got a second use. So it's like you wear this thing because it's comfortable, but at the exact same time, it's a pouch for gathering. Yeah. Or you wear this thing because you can line it with hay and sleep on your back or something like that. Like it's always got this in extra use. And so the hats, especially if they're wandering and gathering ingredients, could have been used for like ingredient storage. Like they'd take their hat off and fill it with stuff, and then they might stick it on, and it just stretches them out and makes them look wonkier and weirder and taller and bulbous. Yeah. And so it's like, oh yeah, like their hats are even long. Like a regular witch who lives in the city doesn't need that, but one that's like out in the woods and he's using it to collect stuff and stuff like that, it just becomes extra long and weird.
It can also be like, this is where if they have like these incorporeal companion spirits, maybe that's kind of what they're known for, and they kind of live inside of these tall hats.
Spirit can whelm your hat.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe it's the only article of clothing that can be whelmed in Obojima are these tall hats.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like a spirit wouldn't be able to whelm your shirt or your, shoes or something, but these are special. These are special. And maybe it's just the way they make them. Maybe they make them out of a secret. There's a special dye that allows that to happen. It's a secret of the coven. And when you become a tall hat, you learn that secret, and then you get to make your own hat.
You make your hat.
Oh, cool. I want to make my hat now.
Who doesn't?
I want to join the tall hats tech with all these other covens.
Who doesn't want to make their hat?
I'm sold on it now. And then, of course, when we do the next coven, then I'll be like, I want to be a crowsworn.
I love the idea of a Nakudama tall hat, that they're short, but they have this very tall hat.
It's a height-based economy. Yeah. If you want to get anything done in the tall hats, like you have to be extra tall.
So funny, like you see this hill, and then you see this hat jumping as it hops along, and
the tassel at the top. And stuff. It's just
blowing in the wind.
So with the tall hat coven, we talk about the caravan. Clearly, there's a reason that they would stay. Like in Alua, they have a permanent location. In the witchery, they have a location, right? They are part of the covens that exist within the witchery. So there is a purpose for them to, stay in one area.
We don't know if those people rotate out, though.
Right. Well, they could go and learn, and then they're back into the coven, right? In the Alua, they might stay there for a while. Maybe they have permanent residence. Maybe they don't. The question is there another reason that the tall hat might want to stay, or maybe not a permanent, right? Like it shouldn't be like a hub where they all hang out, but there's other places where it's like, it's worth having a permanent setup over here that they, whenever we visit this place, we swap people out, and those members join the coven again. Is there another place that they might find important, or is it worth
I just like the identity of them being on the move. I think it's cool. It's something you encounter out in the wild as well. Like if you're traveling around as an adventurer, you'd be like, you could see the caravan moving across. I think about like the game, Banner Saga, where you have your whole like group moving across. Like that's just so cool to me. And especially like you think about the Gift of Shiratashi and what that would look like moving across the landscape. And that's how you find them. You might have to track their caravan down, right? Like follow in their wake. I just think that's really cool. And it makes it very different from, let's say, going to the domain of the Fish-Head Coven, where you go to this building where you find them and you can, entreat with the Council of 3 and 30 or whatever. And presumably the other covens have their own headquarters as well, which I'd love to think about because, the Cloud Caps and Mount Arbora would be really cool to explore.
I mean, it could be like when you're, thinking about locations for the tall hats, it might be festival driven. Like at a certain time, you will find them at this bend in the river. And, at that time, they're going to set up their, they're going to, circle their wagons, and there's going to be this sort of open market. And anybody from all around can actually come there and gather. And then, there's a trade that goes on. And then they take the wagons and they all go off in separate directions, or they all go off on a train. And then maybe at another time of the year, they're found at this one, sacred tree. And then they circle again. And
right. Annually, they do this kind of, that's really cool.
So could be there are these locations, but they're not like permanent encampments.
If permanent isn't the option, then the other question is, do they have any unique skill sets or magics or ways of getting around some of the more forested or difficult terrain that the Gift of Shiratashi might have? For example, the Gift of Shiratashi, at least in one location, is separated by a giant river, right? And so the question is, are they always going to a bridge that it crosses? Are they able to get past that? The other big portion of the Gift of Shiratashi is filled with a dense forest. And so how are they getting through this dense forest? Now, there's probably roads getting through, but do they have magical ways of getting about that? Like, for example, can all of them like cast one huge spell and the chain of carts all kind of float above the ground like a serpent and it kind of like snakes through areas? Or, is there something unique? Maybe they get to a difficult area and they have a deal with the spirit, and the spirit comes and leads them through certain areas, or
they are able to get on the track that the spirit train or the wandering line is on, and they can
exactly
just take that.
Or they have they are able to talk with Mu, the river spirit, and the river actually will kind of part and allow them to ford across or get biblical. Shallow in there. Yeah, very biblical.
That's very cool.
They also might have an affinity with animals, like if they're caravans, and they've probably got horses or oxen that they're using to tow them around, and so they might raise horses and be able to talk with them and have this affinity with animals that way.
Maybe as they get to a certain portion, when they really need to get out of a jam, they might carry around these puffer fish that they can inflate and attach to the top of their carts, and you can see all these carts like hovering above the forest line and floating. They're attached to strings like Macy's Day parade floats. Macy's Day? Macy's Day.
Yeah. So what if instead of, you could do oxen and horses, and I think that's really cool, but you could also have it where, what if they harness flying fish? And so not that the whole thing flies, but it's still being pulled by these fish. I can just imagine these carts being pulled. Something like that would be really cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Tall hats.
I wonder if they
all
also
their mounts have little hats.
Yeah.
It's
perfect.
Their animals.
They could have seahorses.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bobbing along.
Yeah.
Little hats on.
I like them harnessing the other wandering creatures on the island to get about. So like fish that float around, the jellyfish that might exist. I wonder if they have any special connection to maybe one of the great beasts, especially, does the Tall Hat Coven stop what they're doing and sprint towards the Sky King in case the Sky King eats like a giant koi or something like that, or the hunter, if we can get a scale quick.
Could be that one of them is dazzled by bunch of colors, so they all wave their big hats around,
Yeah.
and just like all these colors.
Yeah, it's like a version.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, with that,
The puck has
I think we've tall hatted it up. We've
Everything
explained
there is to say about the tall
there's
hats has now been
nothing
said.
more.
wrapped it in
No,
a little bow.
The puck of time is telling us to wrap things up, unfortunately. That said, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to hear in the comments below what you think the Tall Hats like little caravan loop should visit. Like what are the types of festivals? What are they doing? What city, like if they went to Okiri, what kind of like what are they doing there? Is anything special? How does I think that Okiri has quite a powerful witch living there. So how does the Tall Hats interact when they find a village that has a potent or powerful witch existing there already? Is there a little bit of headbutting? Are they liking it? What's going
Some
on?
covens might have put more pressure on the unaffiliated witches than others. And so
It'd be
on.
interesting. We'd love to hear your thoughts and what you think would happen. That said, if you haven't already, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Amazon Music, all of those things, Spotify, Apple Music. There's a whole list. You can also join us on Discord and Reddit, active community there where we do cool stuff, and we're getting even cooler. We're doing more and more things there. We'd love to see you on there adding homebrew or talking about Obojima. Anyways, thank you so much. You have a great rest of your day, and we will get you next time.